Hi everybody, this is Bonnie Barker with BonnieBayCrochet.com, and today I want to show you how to make the Wheatfield cape. This cape features the wheat stitch as well as the Celtic weave around the collar and along the bottom. It also includes some leather snap closures, which are very easy to find online, and I have all those links in the video description below. And before we go any further, if I could please ask you to subscribe to my channel and hit that thumbs up if you like the project, and definitely hit that notification bell so that you don't miss any of the new offerings I have coming your way. And I have a lot of really fun things lined up for this fall and winter. Okay, well, let's go ahead and I'm going to show you what you need for this project. For this project, I'm going to be using 5 hanks or scans of this 100% wool called Scout. Each scan has 274 yards, 250 meters, or 100 grams. I'll go ahead and give you the stats right there. This is a DK weight wool, or light, the number 3 right there. And you are also going to need a size H, or 8 or 5.00 millimeter crochet hook. And as always, I recommend that you have a yarn needle and a pair of sharp scissors. You're also going to need some notions for this. These are leather snaps. I'm going to go ahead and show you how they come apart here. If you would like to get some just like this, I have the information to the seller in the video description below. Again, you're going to need 5 of these. And you're also going to need matching sewing thread, this color, so that you can sew these onto the project at the end. Okay, let's begin. We're going to start with our slip knot, and we are going to chain 75 chains. For row number 1, we are going to start in the second chain from hook, and we are going to work a single crochet in that second chain and in each chain across. I'm preferring to work on one side of the chain. As you can see, if you prefer to work in the back bump, that's fine, but we will be working across the other side of this chain before we're finished. Well, before we're finished with the project. So go ahead and just work single crochets in each of those chains, and when we're finished with this row, you should have a total of 74 single crochets. So this is what you should have after finishing the first row. And I do have a little bit of curliness in there. Just wanted to show that to you so that you're not worried about that. This will be coming out within the next row or 2. Okay, now for row 2, we are going to chain 2, 1. Well, let's try that one again. Chain 2, 1, 2. And we're going to double crochet in the first stitch. Now this is the repeat that we're going to do from this point on across. We're going to double crochet in the next 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to work 2 double crochets, which would be an increase in the next stitch. 1 and 2. So the repeat all the way across is double crochet in the next 3 and then 2 double crochets in the next stitch. And this would probably be a really good time for me to say something about my speed. Sometimes I can go a little too quickly, and I do apologize for that, but I do have a solution for you if you find that the stitching is too quick. Write down right here on the bottom of your screen, if near the bottom of your screen, if you're using a computer, it'll be on this side for the left hand side. There's a little icon that looks like a little gear. If you click on that, you will have a menu that pops up that will allow you to select the playback speed, and all you need to do is select a slower playback speed. On your iPhone devices, right up here there'll be 3 vertical dots. It'll be right over here for the left-handed version. If you click on that, and that will also bring up the playback speed, and you can select a slower speed to slow me down, or if you're getting kind of bored, you can speed me up. All right, so I hope that serves you. So go ahead and finish row number 2. At the end of those repeats all the way across, you should have 1 stitch left, so go ahead and work a double crochet in that last stitch, and this is what you should have all the way across. As you can see, a lot of that curl has left, and we should have a total of 92 stitches at this point. Now we're going to begin row 3, which is going to help establish our pattern stitch. Okay, so we are going to chain 1, and in that first stitch we are going to work a single crochet and a double crochet. So single crochet and a double crochet in that same space. Now over the next 8 stitches we are going to be working the wheat cable, and the first part of that is working what we call a front post back cross, okay, or a front post using front post treble crochets, but I'll show that to you right now. We're going to skip the next 2 stitches. We are going to front post treble crochet in the next 2 stitches. Now working behind the last 2 stitches, we are going to front post treble in these 2 stitches, and the way we do this is we come into the large hole here, and using the feelers or nerve endings in our tall man and thumbkin, we can determine which is the correct stitch, which is right here, and I can put my thumb through that hole and then make this a little bit easier to complete that front post treble crochet. And then we're going to do it again in the stitch right next to it right here, so you can see that. It's a little tricky at first, but I promise you it gets easier as you go. Now we're going to skip the next 2 stitches, and we're going to front post treble in the next 2 stitches. We're going to be doing the front cross version of this. Treble that stitch there. Now working in front of these last 2 stitches, we're going to front post treble in these 2 stitches. Okay, 1, and the next one right here, 2. Okay, let's just pause and take a look at that. Okay, so now after we do that, we are going to work a single crochet and a double crochet in the next stitch, which is right here. So as you can guess, this is going to be another increase row. Single crochet and a double crochet. And then we're going to repeat this all the way across. We're going to do another wheat cable. This is, I'm using the instructions for row 1 in case you're following the pattern. And then we work a single crochet and double crochet in the next stitch. I'll go ahead and work this one more time with you. Skip the next 2 stitches. Front post treble in the next 2 stitches, 1, 2. Working behind the last stitches, we're going to front post treble in the 2 stitches that we skipped. And make sure that you don't accidentally work a treble stitch over a stitch that we've already worked in. Okay, and then the next one is right here. And we front post treble there. And now we're going to skip the next 2 stitches, 1, 2, and we're going to front post treble in the next 2 stitches. And now we're working in front of the last 2 stitches. We front post treble in the 2 stitches that we just skipped. And in the next stitch, we work a single crochet and then a double crochet. So go ahead and repeat that all the way across. After working that all the way across, you should have 2 stitches left, and the last repeat of the single crochet double crochet is going to be worked 1 stitch. Single crochet in that next stitch and then a double crochet in that last stitch. And this is what you should have at the end of row number 3, and this is the front side facing. So the odd numbers are going to have the front side facing. Okay, you should have a total of 102 stitches at the end of row 3. Now we're going to turn and we are going to work row number 4. We're going to work a chain 1, and then we're going to single crochet in the first stitch, and now we're going to do a double crochet and then a single crochet in that same second stitch there. Now as we come to the back side of the cable, we are simply going to work back post double crochets, not treble, but double crochets just across. So we're going to have 8 of those. So that's 2, 3, 4. That's half of that cable, and then 4 more. 5. Well, let's make sure we get it in the right space there. 6. 7. And 8. Let's pause and take a look at that. So after working those 8 back post double crochets across the back side of the wheat cable, we come to our double stitch, which is the double crochet, single crochet from the last row. We're going to work a single crochet over that double crochet, and in the next stitch, which is that little single crochet, we're going to work 2 stitches, a double crochet and then a single crochet. I'll go ahead and repeat this for you one more time. Back post double crochets over the next 8 stitches. This would be on the back side of this wheat cable. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And I'll maybe try to give you a better view here. Make sure that you get these stitches that are crossed. They can be a little tricky. And 7, 8, and when it comes to the next 2 stitches, we're going to work a single crochet in that first stitch, and then a double crochet and a single crochet in that stitch in between. And let me just say something about this is as we progress in adding stitches like this in between the cables, you need to make sure that it's single crochet, double crochet, single crochet, double crochet, that it alternates as you go, and that's going to help establish that really nice double stitch texture that's in between the cables. So go ahead and work that all the way across, and I'll show you the end of the row. So as we work this all the way across, we're going to work a single crochet in that next stitch, and in the last stitch we're going to work that single crochet, the double crochet, and then a single crochet. So let's go ahead and turn and see what we have after 4 rows. Okay, now we're ready to begin row number 5. We're going to chain 2, 1, 2, then we're going to double crochet in that first stitch, and after we do that we're going to single crochet in the next stitch, and then we're going to work a double crochet and a single crochet in the next stitch. So let me just go ahead and pause. So we've worked a double crochet in the first stitch, single crochet in the next, a double crochet, and then a single crochet in the next stitch, and we're back to working row 1 of the wheat cable, which is like we worked 2 rows below. We're going to skip the next 2 stitches, front post treble in the next 2 stitches, working behind those last 2 stitches. We're going to front post treble in the 2 stitches that we skipped. We come into that hole. Remember how to do this. Front post treble in those 2 stitches that we skipped. Now we're going to skip the next 2 stitches, 1, 2, and we're going to front post treble. If I can get, there we go, get the stitch in the right place. in the next 2 stitches. And working in front of those last 2 stitches, we're going to front post treble in the 2 stitches that we just skipped. Okay, so after working the wheat cable, then we are going to be working in these stitches here. We're going to work a double crochet and then a single crochet. Again, making sure the double crochets are on the single crochets and the single crochets are crocheted into the top of the double crochets. And then that last stitch, we're going to work an increase, which is going to be a double crochet and a single crochet worked in that 1 stitch. So now we have 4 stitches in between, and that is the repeat all the way across, working the 8 stitches of that wheat cable, and then double crochet, single crochet, and then a double crochet and a single crochet in that next stitch. So go ahead and work that all the way across. Okay, row 5 ended with an even double crochet and then a single crochet in that last stitch. We're going to go ahead and turn, and we're ready to work row number 6. We're going to chain 2, 1, 2. We're going to work a double crochet in that first stitch, and then the next stitch is a single crochet, and then we work a double crochet, and then in this double crochet here we're going to work a single crochet and a double crochet. That's going to be our increase right there. And as we work over the cable section, we're going to work 8 back post double crochets, just like we did 2 rows earlier. I think you're going to see the pattern here in the rows to follow. It's very similar to what we've already done. Let's go ahead and do these 4. And 7 and 8, and always make sure that you have 8 of those back post double crochets as we go across that cable. And then as we get to the next section here, double crochet, single crochet, double crochet, and then we work a single crochet and a double crochet in that stitch. So let's take a look at that. So as we go across, we're going to do those 8 back post double crochets, and then we're going to have 5 stitches in between those cables. Double crochet, single crochet, double crochet, and then a single and a double in that last stitch there of that. So go ahead and work that repeat all the way across. Okay, at the end of row 6, we just worked through that pattern, the double crochet, single crochet, double crochet, and then a single and a double in the last stitch. Now we're ready to go to row number 7. And for this row, we are not going to have any increases. So we're just going to work the double stitch and the wheat stitch as usual without adding more. Let me show you what that means. So for the first stitch, we're going to work single crochet and then a double crochet in that single crochet, and then a single, and then a double, and then a single crochet. So let's take a look at that. We're only working 5 stitches just like the last row, except that we're not adding any increases like we did on the last row. Okay, now we're going to work the wheat stitch row 1 as usual, skip 2 stitches, front post treble in the next 2 stitches, working behind those last 2 stitches. We're going to front post treble in the 2 stitches that we skipped. And then we do this, we skip 2 stitches to the other side of the wheat cable, front post treble in those 2 stitches. Now working in front of these last 2 stitches, we are going to front post treble crochet in those 2. Let's try that again. That one got away from me. And front post treble in those 2 stitches that we skipped. Okay, so let's go ahead and I'll show you the repeat over this one more time. We're going to work a single crochet, a double crochet, single, and then a double, and then a single. And again, just make sure that if you have the small stitch, you're crocheting it in the larger stitch, and then the larger stitch goes on top of that small stitch so that it evens out. So that is the repeat. Those wheat stitches here, the front post treble crochets in the wheat stitch instructions, and then those 5 stitches there. So go ahead and repeat that all the way across. This is what you should have after completing row number 7. Now this is something I should have mentioned sooner, but I'll mention it now. It's always a good idea after you've finished a cabling row to make sure that the cables are going in the direction that you want them to be. So just a quick visual check of each cable will save you a lot of headaches and a lot of ripping out later. So just take a couple, seconds here and just make sure that all the cables are going in the direction that you want them to, and that looks good. So now we're ready to move on to row number 8. For row number 8, we're going to chain 2, 1, 2, and we are not going to be increasing in this row either. So we're just going to work those double stitches, which would be the double crochet, single crochet, double crochet, single crochet, and then a double crochet. Let's just pause to take a look at that. So we have 5 stitches there, and then we are going to work the 8 back post double crochets over the back side of our wheat cable, and that's going to be the repeat. I'll go ahead and I'll show you the double stitches after I finish the cable here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Whoops, let's go ahead and do that one again. And carefully pull the loops through that one. And then number 7 and number 8. And now working over the texture of this double stitch or 2 stitch. So we have double crochet in that single, and then a single in the double, and then a double, and then a single crochet and a double crochet. And let's go ahead and pull that up there. There we go. And that is going to be your repeat for row number 8. This is what you should have at the end of 8 rows. Now we're going to begin row 9, which is going to be another increase row, and hopefully you're understanding how this is coming together so far. We're going to work a single crochet and then a double crochet, a single crochet, a double crochet, and then we're going to work a single and a double in that next stitch. So that brings the count to 6 stitches in that section. And work the front side facing, skip the next 2 stitches, front post treble over the next 2 stitches, and working behind those 2 stitches, we're going to front post treble over those 2 stitches that we just skipped. And again, making sure that it's turning the direction we want. It is. Skip those 2 stitches, front post treble in the next 2 stitches, and working in front of those last 2 stitches, we're going to front post treble in the 2 stitches that we skipped. Hopefully you're understanding this stitch pretty well and you're growing more comfortable with it at this point. So I'll work this section again for you. Again, this is an increase row, and as you've noticed, whenever you do an increase row, you're going to increase in that last stitch by working 2 stitches there.
Okay, so we're gonna also just making sure that you're alternating these single crochet and the double crochet. So single crochet, double crochet, and then single crochet, and then double crochet, and then this is where we work 2 stitches, single crochet and double crochet. So that's going to be your repeat all the way across. You have just the regular row 1 of the wheat stitch pattern here, and then we have 6 stitches alternating single crochet and double crochet, making sure you work 2 stitches as an increase row in that particular row, or particular stitch rather. Okay, so now at the end of this row you should have 146 stitches. Now I'm going to give you a small assignment for row 10 and 11. You are not going to be adding any new stitches for rows 10 and 11, but for row 10 you will work the back post double crochets across, and then again just maintaining the single crochet, double, single crochet, double, single, double, those 6 stitches in the center in between the stitches. And then for row 11 you're just going to simply work across like we're doing now, but do not add any stitches. You'll still maintain the 6 stitch count in between the cables. So go ahead and work rows 9, 10, and 11. This is what your piece should look like after 11 rows. Now we are going to work row 12, and for row 12 we're going to chain 1. This is going to be an increase row, so we're going to increase right over here in just a second. So we're going to start with a single crochet and then a double crochet. We're going to alternate that for a bit. Single crochet and then double crochet, single crochet, and now we come to the last stitch. We're going to work a double crochet and a single crochet. So let's take an inventory here. We should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 stitches in between your cables for this row. So again, make sure you add 2 stitches, alternating them in that last stitch, and then we work the 8 back post double crochets across the next 8 stitches. Okay, since you know what that looks like, let me go ahead and give you another small assignment. So this is row number 12, which is an increase row. And then after this, you're going to work row 13 with the front side facing. And this is just working in pattern stitch, no increases for the next 2 rows, rows 13 and row 14. So row 13, you'll have this side facing, and you're going to be working in 7 stitches in between the cables. And then for row 14, it'll be the back side facing, and again with just 7 stitches in between the cables. So go ahead and work rows 12, 13, and 14. This is what you should have after having completed 14 rows. Okay, now row 15 is another increase row. And let me mention one thing about the beginning stitch, because I haven't been as specific as I probably could have been earlier. Whenever you begin with a single crochet, you're working in a single crochet, you know you're going to be working a double crochet in that space. Chain 2 at the beginning of the row. If you are going to be working in the top of a double crochet, which you know you will work a single crochet, you just need to chain 1. So let me show you. To begin row 15, we're going to chain 2 because our first stitch is going to be a double crochet. And then we're going to work alternating double crochet, single crochet until we get to the last stitch, since this is going to be an increase row. Okay, so our last stitch is a single crochet, so we're going to work a double crochet and then another single crochet in that space. So now we should have a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 stitches in between the wheat cable. And for the wheat cable section, we're just going to work The row 1 version where we skip 2, front post treble in these 2, and then working behind these, front post treble in these 2 stitches, just like we've been working all along. So we're going to complete this row, which is row 15, an increase row, again with 8 stitches in between the cables. And then I want you to go ahead and work the next 2 rows, rows 16 and 17, working in pattern stitch, just the way we've been working, without adding any new stitches in between here. So we're going to be working this row, will have 8 stitches in between all the cables, and then the next 2 rows will also have 8 stitches in between. And just be careful that you're working the large stitch over the small stitch and the small stitch over the large stitch. This is what you should have after 17 rows. And the stitch count for the last 3 rows should be 168 stitches. Now for row 18, we are going to have another increase row, followed by 2 rows worked in pattern stitch, just like we've been doing. So I'll go ahead and start. This is row 18. We're going to chain 2, and we start with a double crochet, and we're going to alternate that double crochet and single crochet across, and we're going to just work 2 stitches in that last stitch. But I just want to go ahead and work it for you. If I can get my fingers to coordinate. There we go. And in the last stitch here, we're going to work a single crochet followed by a double crochet for the increase. I just want to go ahead and show you we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 stitches in between. That's how many you're going to have in between the cable, and then of course the cable section you just work 8 back post double crochets like you've been doing for the back side row 2 of the wheat cable. So go ahead and work that increase row, and then work 2 more rows in pattern stitch, and that would bring you up to row number 20. So we're going to be doing row 18, 19, and 20. And the stitch count, let me go ahead and give that to you. After this row, you should have 179 stitches. This is what you should have after completing 20 rows. And we are now going to start row 21, which is another increase row. So we're going to chain 1, and since we have a double crochet, we are going to work a single crochet there, and we're going to alternate double crochet, single crochet as we go across. And you guessed it, once we get to that last stitch here, we are going to add another one. Let's go ahead and work our way across. See, we're working the double crochets over the single crochets and the single crochets over the double crochet to maintain that double stitch. And we get to that last stitch, so let's go ahead and work a single crochet and then a double crochet in that space. And just like we've been doing with the cabling, we're going to skip 2 stitches, working row 1 of the wheat cable, and front post treble crochet over these 2 stitches, and then working behind the stitches, front post treble in these 2, etc., just like we've been doing. And we're going to work that all the way across, and let's just give you a count: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so we're going to have 10 stitches in between the cables as we go across. So don't forget to add 2 stitches instead of 1 in that last stitch, alternating between the single crochet and double crochets. So that will be for row 21. And for rows 22 and 23, you're just going to work in pattern stitch like we've been doing, continuing to work, but only with 10 stitches in between. Do not add stitches on rows 22 or 23. So go ahead and finish those 3 rows. After the completion of 23 rows, your piece should start to resemble the shape of a cape, like I'm showing you here. Okay, now we're going to go on to, let's turn it this way with the back side facing. We're going to start row 24, and this is going to be another increase row. So we're going to start this with, see, we have a double crochet here, so we're going to chain 1, and we're going to work a single crochet and then a double crochet, and we're going to alternate this to the last stitch. So work that until the last stitch, and then I'll show you the increase. So now we get to that last stitch until we get to the cable section. We're going to work a double crochet and a single crochet in that stitch, and let's go ahead and count the stitches. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11. So we're going to have 11 of those stitches working the alternating between the double crochet and single crochet in between the cable stitches. And since we're working row 2 again of that wheat stitch, we're going to work 8 back post double crochets across those 8 stitches that make up that wheat cable. So go ahead and finish that row, and then after you do that, I'm going to have you work rows 25 and rows 26, which is just, again, row 25 is going to be working with the front side facing, just continue in pattern stitch, and row 26 with the back side facing in pattern stitch, and you're going to be working only over 11 stitches for those 2 rows for the stitch work in between the cables. So go ahead and finish those 3 rows. After completing 26 rows, this is what you should have. And we are going to do what we've been doing for rows 27 through 29. For row 27, this is going to be our increase row. So we are going to chain 2, since the first stitch is going to be a double crochet worked in that single crochet, and then a double single crochet in that double crochet, and we're going to alternate the double stitch or 2 stitch single crochet, double crochet all the way until we get to that last stitch. I'll just go ahead and work this one with you. I hope you're enjoying this. The pattern should be pretty straightforward at this point. Okay, now we get to the last stitch of this increase row. We're going to do a double crochet followed by a single crochet. So now we should have a total of 12 stitches. Let's verify that. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12. There are going to be 12 stitches in between the cables. So after working those 12 stitches on this increase row, I'm going to go ahead and work this with you. Skip these 2 stitches, front post treble in the next 2 stitches, just to give a little refresher for those of you who may benefit from that. Working behind these last 2 stitches, front post treble in the 2 stitches that we skipped, and the next one right there. And then we're going to skip 2 more stitches, 1 2, front post treble in the next 2 stitches, and then working in front of these 2 stitches, we're going to front post treble in the 2 stitches that we skipped. So that is your repeat all the way across, and again, make sure that you have 12 stitches in between the cables, making sure that you increase 1 stitch in that last stitch as you go across the row. And the next 2 rows, which would be rows 28 and 29, you're just going to work in pattern stitch like we've been doing. So go ahead and work those 3 rows, and then I'll show you the next step. After 29 rows, your piece should look about like this. So it should still be becoming more and more cape-like as you go, as we add these increase rows. So now we're ready to begin row number 30. This will be with the back side facing, and this is another increase row. So we're going to start this by chaining 2, since the first stitch we're going to work on this double stitch or 2 stitch section is a double crochet and then a single crochet. So go ahead and alternate that until you get to the last stitch of this section. The last stitch of this section is a double crochet, so we're going to work a single crochet and then a double crochet, working 2 stitches in that last section, and that's going to bring our stitch count up. That's going to be in between the cables to 13 stitches, alternating the double and the single crochets. And then you're going to work the 8 back post double crochets across this cable for row number 30. So we're going to do that for row 30, and then for rows 31 and 32 we're just going to continue working in the pattern stitch the way we've been working. Of course, with row 31 and 32 you will not be increasing, you will only be maintaining the 13 stitches between the cables. Let me just go ahead and show you this. Yeah, between the cables as we go across. So go ahead and work those next 3 rows. After 32 rows, this is where you should be. Now we're about to do the next 3 rows. We're going to be working row number 33, and as you would guess it, this is also an increase row. And so for this increase row, we are going to, let's try that again, start with a chain 1 and a single crochet and then double crochet, being careful again to work the small stitch over the large stitch and the large stitch over the small. So go ahead and work that until the last stitch of this grouping, and the last stitch of this section we're going to work a single crochet and a double crochet for the increase on this section, and you will have a total of 14 stitches in between the cable section. And for this row 33 you're going to work row 1 of the wheat stitch, and you should know how to do that by now. And after you work that row, we're going to work row 34 and 35, again working in pattern stitch, and you should have 14 of these stitches in between, you know, alternating the single crochet and double crochet as you go. So 14 stitches in between your cables. So go ahead and work the next 3 rows. Okay, I've just completed row 35, and I'll show you, give me an idea where I am. So now we're going to work rows 36, 37, and 38. Okay, to begin row 36, we're going to chain 1. Let's go ahead and get the camera to just focus on what I'm going to do here. We begin this section again with a single crochet and a double crochet. We're going to alternate back and forth. This is another increase row. So at the end of this row, let me show you, I'm going to go ahead and work these double stitch, alternating my single crochet and double crochet until I get to that last stitch, and I'll show you that increase. Now I'm at that last stitch along the double stitch section, and I'm going to make an increase by working a double crochet and a single crochet. And that's what you're going to do every time you get to this section in between the cables. And for this row we're just going to work 4 back post double crochets over the cabling section, and then again when we get to the double stitch we're going to alternate, starting with a single crochet and then a double crochet, and then in this last stitch over here we're going to work a double crochet and a single crochet. So go ahead and finish that. That is row 36. And for rows 37 and 38 we're just going to continue to work in pattern stitch. Row 37 will be with the front side facing, and then row 38 will be with the back side facing. So go ahead and work those next 3 rows. After working 38 rows, this is what you should have, and we're getting very close to changing to a different stitch. This is the last increase row that we're going to do. So let me go ahead and start you with this. This is row number 39. We are going to chain 2, 1, 2, and start with a double crochet in that first stitch and then a single crochet. And go ahead and alternate the double crochet and single crochet of this double stitch until you get to the last stitch of this section, which is right here, and then I'll show you the stitches there. After alternating double crochet, single crochet, when you come to that last stitch of this section, we're going to work a double crochet and then a single crochet. Okay, now we're just going to work the row 1 of the wheat stitch, which would be skip these 2 and front post treble in this stitch, just like you've been doing, and then working behind the stitches, etc. Go ahead and work that row 1 of the wheat stitch and go ahead and work this all the way across, and in between the cable sections you should have a total of 16 stitches. Remember, now this is an increase row, so you're going to be working the 2 stitches in the last stitch here as you work that double stitch section. So go ahead and complete row 39 only, and I will show you row 40, which is going to be very different from what we've been doing. After finishing row 39, you should have 256 stitches. This is really important as we work row 40, which is kind of the foundation row to begin our Celtic weave. So we're going to work this foundation row. This is again with the back side facing. That's also kind of important. We're going to chain 2, and we're just going to work double crochets all the way across those 16 stitches. Just working in through the top loops like we normally would. So go ahead and work those 16 double crochets. After working 16 double crochets all the way across, we are now going to work the back post double crochets across the next 8 stitches, which is the back side of that wheat cable, just like we've been doing. So go ahead and work those 8 stitches, and this is going to be the repeat all the way across, just working those 16 double crochets over this section, and then the 8 back post double crochets across the cable portion. So go ahead and finish that all the way across, and then I will see you for row number 41 when we begin one of my favorite stitches. Now we're ready to begin row 41, which begins the Celtic weave. We're going to start with a chain 2, and we're going to skip the first 2 stitches, 1, 2, and in the next 2 stitches we're going to work a front post treble crochet. This is very much like part of the cable work we've been doing. So we work it in those 2 stitches. Now, working in front of these 2 stitches, we're going to front post treble over the 2 stitches that we skipped, and we are going to use that very first stitch of the row. Okay, so that's our first crossing, and that is pretty much what we're going to work all the way across. I'll do another one for you. Skip 2 stitches, and we front post treble in each of the next 2 stitches. Working in front of these last 2 stitches, we're going to front post treble in the 2 stitches that we just skipped. So it should look like this, and you're going to go ahead and work that all the way across the row. After having worked that all the way across, we're going to work a double crochet in the chain 2 space right there. Now, before we go on to the next section, I wanted to point something out. Make sure that over the cabling portion that you didn't automatically work behind and make it look like this, because I actually did that accidentally. So make sure that all of the cables or the crossings here look the same, especially over the cabling portion, okay? That's going to be very important. Okay, now we're ready to work row 42, which is also row 2 of the Celtic weave. We're going to start with the chain 2, and we're going to work back post treble crochet in the first 2 stitches. So I'll go ahead and do those with you. Okay, this is just at the beginning that you start in those first 2 stitches. After that, we are going to skip the next 2 stitches, 1, 2, and then we're going to back post treble in the next 2 stitches, 1 and 2. Now the next part is a little bit trickier. So what we're going to do now is working in front of the last 2 stitches as seen from the front side. Okay, I'm going to come around behind, and I'm going to actually work a back post treble crochet in this stitch and then in this stitch, again using those nerve endings in your fingers there. Okay, we're going to come around and we're going to do this stitch first. Okay, and then complete that back post treble crochet and then do the next stitch. Coming around, again, you're crossing it as seen from the front side. We're going to use this stitch just like that. It is a little unusual, but once you've done it a few times, I think you'll understand. So I'm going to do this for you again. Skip the next 2 stitches, 1, 2, and then we're going to back post treble in the next 2 stitches. There we go. And the next stitch. Now working in front of these stitches as seen from the front side. That's the important part, because we don't want to cross them here. You don't want to do that. You want to go around the back. Okay, we're coming in the back side and we're going to work the first stitch over this stitch. And then the next stitch. Again, we're coming in the back around that stitch. And so we're going to work this all the way across, but I'm going to show you what it looks like with the front side facing. Your stitches should be crossing like this on the front side. So go ahead and finish that all the way across, and I'll show you the last few stitches, because the last 2 stitches are going to simply be worked with those trebles in the next 2 stitches, just like I did at the beginning, but I'll show that to you when we end the row. After working this all the way across, you should have 2 more stitches left here, and then of course we have the turning chain. So we are just not going to skip any stitches, but just work back post treble crochets in the last 2 stitches. And then we're going to work a double crochet right in the chain space like that. And let me go ahead and let you see the front side. This is what the stitch should look like. And this is after working 2 rows, rows 41 and 42 of the Celtic Weave. Now for rows 43 through 46, we're going to repeat rows 41 and 42 2 more times. So go ahead and work that. I'm going to go ahead and start you. I will start you on the next row, which would be row 43. We're just going to chain 2, and it should be a lot easier to see now. We're going to skip the first 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, since we're not going to be using this in our Celtic Weave, and front post treble crochet in the next 2 stitches, working in front of these last 2 stitches. We're going to front post treble crochet in the 2 stitches that we skipped, and we're going to work that again just like we did in row 41. Work that all the way across. So go ahead and work rows 43 through 46. At the end of row 46, this is what the bottom of your cape should look like. Now we're ready to work row 47, and this is going to be the absolute last row of the cape. So we're going to start with a chain 2, 1, 2, and then we're going to work front post double crochet starting in that 2nd stitch all the way across the row. So front post double crochets, and then at the end of the row we're going to work a half double crochet in that chain 2 space. So go ahead and work that all the way across. After working those front post double crochets all the way across, go ahead and fasten off. Give that a chain and give it a generous strand so that it'll be easy to hide that loose strand. Now we're going to work on the collar. Now to work on the collar, we're going to have, I just want to be very clear about this, because the collar is actually going to flip down. So as we work the collar, we're going to start the first row with the wrong side facing, or the back side facing. So make sure that you do it this way. This is really, really important. And we're going to join with a slip stitch to this foundation chain. And go ahead and give it a chain. Now we're going to single crochet in each stitch as we work across this foundation chain. And what you're going to be doing is you're just going to be working opposite the single crochets right here that we worked for our row 1. And as you can see, I'm going over the remaining 2 strands of that foundation chain, so it is going to be completely hidden. And this is another reason why I encourage you to just use a chain and not to use the single crochet foundation, because if we had used that, we'd be crocheting over a lot more bulk at this point, which again wouldn't be a problem. But I think for this design, that this just a regular old chain works pretty well. Okay, so go ahead and work those single crochets all the way across the row. So after working those single crochets all the way across, we're going to turn, and we're going to begin row number 2. We're going to chain 2, and the first 2 stitches are going to have 2 double crochets worked in them. This is going to be an increase row. So we're going to work 2 double crochets in that first stitch, and then 2 double crochets in the next stitch. Okay, now the repeat all the way across the row until you get to the next, or to the last 2 stitches, is going to be this: double crochet in the next 2 stitches, just 1 in each of those stitches, and then 2 double crochets in the next stitch. Okay, it's very important. It's very important that at the end of this row, you're going to have a total of 102 double crochets, and that is including the turning chain as a stitch. Okay, so again, the repeat is double crochet, 1 double crochet in the next 2 stitches, and then 2 double crochets in the next stitch. So just for clarity, so we have 1, 1, and then 2 as you go across. 1 double crochet, 1 double crochet, and then 2 double crochet. So go ahead and work that across. The last 2 stitches, you're going to work 2 double crochets each in those last 2 stitches. So go ahead and finish that row. So after working this all the way across, you should actually have 3 stitches and not 2 left. So you have 1, 2, 3 stitches left. We're going to work a double crochet in that first of the 3 stitches left, and then 2 double crochets in the last 2 double crochets, or actually they were single crochets we worked in. So let's go ahead and finish this. Now the stitch count, which is including the turning chain, a lot of my patterns don't include the turning chain as a stitch, but this one actually does. So including this as a stitch right here, you should have 102 double crochets all the way across that collar. Now we're going to turn, and for rows 3 through 6, we're going to work the Celtic Weave pattern. And since I just showed you what this looks like, I'm going to go ahead and start you, because I actually work this a little bit differently than I did on the bottom section of the cape. For the bottom section, I actually used this stitch, but we're not going to use that stitch for the first cross. We're going to skip 1, 2, 3 stitches, and then we're going to work the Celtic Weave. Working front post treble crochets in those next 2 stitches, and then working in front of these stitches, the last 2 stitches, we're going to work a front post treble in the 2nd stitch and in the 3rd stitch. And I'll show you how to do that. and in the next stitch. Okay, so we're going to work that all the way across. This is with the front side, or actually with the front side of the collar facing, but actually it's going to have the back side of the work facing. And let me show you why we're doing it this way, because then when we fold the collar down, then the front side of this collar is going to be facing and leaning on the front side of the project here. So go ahead and work Celtic Weave rows 1 and 2, and you work them 2 times, so it's going to be a total of 4 rows of Celtic Weave. At the end of round 6, this is what the collar should look like. Now we just have 1 more row to work. This will be row 7, and we are going to chain 2, 1, 2, and just like at the bottom of the cape, we are going to work starting in the 2nd stitch right here. We're going to work front post double crochets all the way across. So go ahead and do that, and I will show you the end of this row. At the end of that last row, we're just going to give it a chain and a tug, and again cut a nice generous strand so that we can hide that away a little bit later. So now the collar is complete, and we're ready to move on. So now we're ready to begin the right front edging. This is with the front side facing, and this is the right front. We are not going to be working over the Celtic Weave section, but we're going to start right here, which is right before where the Celtic Weave section begins. And we're going to use our slip knot. We're going to join the chain, and I'm going to work 51 single crochets evenly along this side. And I'm going to go ahead and give you instructions for the next 6 rows, or actually next 5 rows after this. So we're going to work 51 single crochets from this point all the way to the row right here, which is right before the collar begins. Okay, we don't want to work on the collar, but this single crochet right here is where our last stitch will be worked. So we're going to work 51 single crochets from here to here. After we do that, we're going to chain 1 and turn, and we're going to work 1 single crochet in each single crochet across. We're going to do that for the next 5 rows. So I'm going to go ahead and work that section, and then I'll show you what I have when I'm done. After working 6 rows of the single crochet, go ahead and fasten off with a chain, and again a nice generous strand so that it will be easy to hide later on. Let's go ahead and take a look at what we just did. Of course, it's all curly right now. We need to block this for sure, and that will take a lot of this out of the fabric. So this is what we have for the right front side. Now for the left front side, let's go ahead and there we go. Find it right here. Now to start this side, we're going to actually do the same thing that we did on this other side, working the 51 single crochets evenly across, but we're going to start by joining the yarn right here. And let me show you, this is the row where we began the collar, but we're going to start in right below there. I'm going to go ahead and get the yarn to join. So we're going to want to join our yarn, get that slip knot. Let's move that strand out of the way. So we're going to join with a slip stitch or a chain, like I like to do, right there. And then we're going to make our first single crochet right there, and then we're going to work those 51 single crochets evenly along the side. So as we work these single crochets down the side, you know, it may take 1 or 2 tries to get that 51 stitches, but it's kind of important that you work approximately 51 stitches down the side, because that'll keep it from being too much bowed out, and and basically too many stitches, and it'll also keep it from pulling too tightly with too few stitches. So go ahead and work those 6 rows. Again, the 1 row which is worked into the edge, and then the 5 rows which is just working 1 single crochet in each stitch across. So go ahead and finish that front left side. After spending the time to block this project, it makes the Celtic weave look really beautiful, and it really helps to straighten out the edges here. Now the only thing left to do is to attach our leather attachments here. Let me just show you these. These are available on Etsy. There's a website in the video description below should you need to look for some of these. And what you need to do is decide where you want them to go. And I left a little bit of an opening down the front, so it's about like this. So you're going to have to kind of eyeball this very carefully, and then once you decide where you want them, you can even use the stitches, to line up where you want them to go. Okay, and I'm recommending that you use needle and thread, and try to get a thread that's as close to the color of the leather as possible, so that the seams are not really prominent. You don't want them to stand out too badly. Okay, so what I would do is I would line one up at the very top, and then also line one up at the bottom, and then you can use a measuring tape and then space the other 2 very evenly along the front seam there. So you go ahead and add these and just carefully sew them into place.
Well, I hope you enjoyed making the Wheatfield cape with me today. If you did, please hit that thumbs up, and please also hit that subscribe button if you haven't subscribed already. And again, the notification bell so that you don't miss any of the new offerings coming your way. Well, thanks again for following along. God bless. Bye-bye.